Welcome back. You're still watching SA Today on the SABC News channel. Now, lawyer and consultant Qunta has launched the Pholosang Fee Facilitation Services, which is aimed at tackling public sector institutions that pay their suppliers late or fail to pay them altogether. It is expected to take on government departments and state-owned entities on behalf of the affected businesses. Qunta, the director for the Pholosang Fee Facilitation Services, joins me now live via Zoom to take the discussion further. Very good afternoon to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us here on the SABC News channel.
Good afternoon, Pholosang.
All right, so let's just go back a bit. What prompted this decision for you to establish these services?
Pholosang, I think everyone knows that the late payment of suppliers is one of the biggest reasons why small businesses especially suffer, and they fail to grow, they fail to create the jobs that they have the potential to grow. And even large companies struggle. The construction companies are an example of large companies that also struggle because they've not been paid both by government and by the private sector. So it's a general problem. And my company itself has experienced this problem. So, at some point we just decided we need to do something about this.
Because I was about to ask you as to how big is this problem in the country, because we know that as it is now, there is a law compelling accounting officers and authorities of institutions falling under the scope of the Public Finance Management Act or the Municipal Finance Management Act, for that matter, to sort of ensure that measures are in place to pay valid invoices and claims within that period of 30 days where applicable. What's still lacking now?
You see, like much else in our country, the legislation and the regulations and policies are in place, but there is a lack of adherence to those policies. And when there's a lack of adherence by officials to those policies, there are no consequences for them. So officials continue to do this. And how big this problem is, if you've seen in the media, just at the beginning of June, the Eastern Cape alone owed suppliers 2.2 billion. And if a study last year done by a small technology company, consulting company called Zero, showed that on average, there is a 91% of the small businesses they surveyed said they had not been paid, and many of them collapsed. So it's a serious problem. The president talks about it. The Public Service Commission in May issued an appeal, particularly during COVID, that suppliers must be paid by government. But despite this problem will not go away until officials are held to account, which is why we've stepped in, and our service will be doing that on behalf of suppliers.
And I was about to say that we have the likes of the Public Service Commission, for example, that is tackling this issue, also reporting on late payment of suppliers. So one could argue that there is a body that's already looking into this. Why the need for you to tap into this?
Because, Pholosang, typically what suppliers do, if a government department or an SOE owes them money, they spend an inordinate amount of time trying to recover that money, often without success. Their only alternative is to go to court. And when they go to court, they spend more money, and it takes long. On average, say between 1.5 years or 1 year and 3 years. And by then, many of them literally go out of business. The Public Service Commission is a body that governs the public sector, but it's not consultants, and they're not going to act for individual suppliers like we do. So if a supplier comes to us and they are owed more than 1 million and more than 60 days, we will take their case and we will use the Public Finance Management Act provisions, and we will interact in the first instance with the accounting authorities. And if that doesn't work, we'll escalate the matter to National Treasury and to the Public Protector. And we believe that that's far more effective than people issuing appeals for suppliers to be paid, whether it's the president or ministers, because the officials are not held to account. The officials are supposed to be subjected to disciplinary proceedings because they are guilty of financial mismanagement in terms of the PFMA if they don't pay suppliers on time. But I can assure you, I have not heard of any particular official who has been dismissed or even disciplined for non-compliance with the PFMA. So that's where we step in as consultants.
Yeah, we'll discuss the prerequisites for businesses to employ your services, but I just want to touch on the effects of COVID-19 in small businesses, because part of what you say is that if the government or the private sector had actually paid every supplier it owed money to immediately prior to this COVID-19 declaration of the national state of disaster, it would have injected at least 27 billion rand into the economy, which would have, on the other hand, sort of mitigated the devastation of the lockdown for businesses. Talk to us more about this.
Well, what I did, how I calculated that, I've referred to the Xerox research, which shows that on average, the money due to SMMEs just is 99,000. The Small Business Institute has calculated, and their calculations are fairly reliable because they've used stats, SA data and SARS data, and they've calculated there are about 250,000 small businesses. When you extrapolate that, you come to that figure of 27 billion. And you can imagine what that would have made to the economy as a whole. Because the other problem is that when you don't pay suppliers on time, they cannot pay their suppliers, they cannot be fine. So there is a whole knock-on effect. They retrench workers. So the issue of job creation, and I just saw before I came on, the issue around how many millions of jobs have been lost. So that 27 billion would have made an incredible difference. So the damage to the economy by officials not paying suppliers on time is actually quite massive.
Yes, indeed. All right, we'll leave it at that for today. We thank you so much for coming through. Qunta is the director for the Pholosang Fee Facilitation Services, talking to us about the services that small businesses may employ if these businesses are owed over 1 million rand by the government and state-owned entities.